I can get through this. Once, in a small, weather-beaten town nestled between the rolling hills and the distant mountain peaks, there lived a man who had no idea just how much he could endure until the day he hit rock bottom. The town itself was a quiet place, its streets lined with old, weather-worn buildings, their windows reflecting the harsh rays of the sun. It seemed like nothing ever changed, as if time had forgotten it. And for him, that was how life felt too. Stale, predictable, and stagnant. Each morning, the sun would rise just like it always did, bright, indifferent, and predictable. The rooster's crow and the distant hum of the town's few early risers would be the only sounds breaking the silence. But for him, each day felt like another set of silent battles, each one more taxing than the last. No one knew about the sleepless nights, the hours spent staring at the ceiling, drowning in the thoughts of every mistake, every regret, every unspoken word. No one knew the heaviness that weighed down his chest, the constant questions that circled his mind. How much longer can I keep going? But it wasn't a dramatic crash that broke him. It wasn't one single catastrophic moment. It was 1,000 tiny things, each one silently creeping up on him, tightening their grip until he could hardly breathe. It was the buildup of disappointment, failure, and self-doubt. Every small setback, every moment of self-criticism was another weight added to his already fragile shoulders. Slowly, he began to feel like he was suffocating under the pressure of it all. The man who once stood with confidence was now barely standing at all. And then, in the midst of it all, something strange happened. Something that would change everything. A shift, subtle at first, but undeniable. It was as if the world around him paused just for a second, and he had the chance to see things differently. He realized in that quiet, unspoken moment that he had not been truly broken. He wasn't at the end. Not yet. He thought he was done. He thought he had nothing left to give. He thought that every ounce of strength had been drained from him, leaving him empty and defeated. But then came the twist, the revelation he hadn't expected. He discovered something about himself that few people ever realize. We are capable of far more than we think, even when we feel like we're at the edge, on the verge of falling apart. It wasn't about avoiding the pain. It was about surviving it. But what exactly was it that clicked for him? What was it that made the difference between surrendering to the darkness and rising above it? How do you begin to believe that you can get through it when each step's like dragging yourself through thick mud? Stay with me, because what happens next will shift your understanding of your own limits. Would you ever guess how close you are to your own breakthrough? It was a late afternoon, the kind of evening where the sun hung low in the sky, casting long, slanted shadows across the room. He sat on the edge of his bed, his hands clenched so tightly that his nails pressed deep into his palms, the sharp sting pulling him back to the present. He was exhausted, more tired than he'd ever been. Every muscle in his body ached, his mind felt numb, yet still he couldn't sleep. Thoughts of everything he hadn't accomplished, every dream that had slipped through his fingers, kept him awake. They twisted in his mind like an endless loop of regret. He stared at the ceiling, its cracked surface mocking him, reflecting every fear and doubt he had ever carried. Each night had become a battle. His life had become a series of monotonous routines. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. He was drained, bit by bit. Conversations with friends felt like obligations. Even his own reflection seemed like a stranger. He had stopped recognizing the person in the mirror, wondering when he had changed so much that he no longer saw the spark of the man he used to be. The silence at night had become a relentless companion, a reminder of everything he hadn't done, everything he had failed to be. One more night passed, and one more night of battling this internal struggle with no one to talk to. But something was different on that morning. It wasn't grand or spectacular, but it was enough to make him stop, enough to make him question everything he thought he knew. The sun had risen just like it always did, gently illuminating the room with soft golden light. He could hear the quiet murmur of the town outside, the life continuing on, unbothered, unchanging. But in the stillness of the moment, something inside him stirred. A small, quiet pulse in his chest, a feeling that he couldn't ignore. As he stood up, the weight of the moment hanging on him like a veil, he walked over to the mirror. He had done this countless times before, but this time was different. This time, he didn't look away. He allowed his eyes to trace the lines on his face, the subtle signs of age, of weariness, of the battles he had fought. For the first time, he didn't see weakness. He saw survival. He saw strength. How had he gotten here to this place where everything felt so broken? But in that moment, he realized he hadn't been broken after all. His mind raced, questioning everything, but in that silence, he found a quiet answer. What if all of this, the sleepless nights, the constant struggle, was part of something bigger? What if this pain, this hardship, was not a sign of weakness, but of growth? What if this was a test he hadn't even realized he was passing? He wasn't broken. He was being reshaped. That day, he went about his usual routine, silent, distant. But as he passed the small, familiar coffee shop on the corner, something caught his attention. Just a fleeting moment. A glance through the window. There in the corner was an old man, sitting at a small table with a cup of coffee, his hands wrapped around it, his eyes staring out the window with a quiet, peaceful intensity. It wasn't the old man's gaze that caught his attention. It was the stillness, the calm. The way the old man seemed so comfortable in his own skin, like he had nothing else to prove, like he wasn't living for anything or anyone except the moment, the simple pleasure of being alive. There was something about the way he held himself, something in the quiet confidence that radiated from him, that sparked something deep inside the man. It was as if the universe had decided, in that moment, to show him something he had been too tired to see. Could it be that simple? Could it be that he, too, could find peace, even in the chaos of his own life? Could he, just for a moment, let go of the weight that he had carried for so long? That question lingered in his mind for the rest of the day, slowly unfolding in his thoughts like a forgotten dream. And with it, a realization began to take root. Peace isn't something you find when everything is perfect. It's something you find when you stop fighting against the imperfections. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about having all the answers. It was about finding a way to live with the questions. And so his journey began, one step, one breath at a time. Days bled into weeks, and with each passing moment, he began to notice subtle changes, imperceptible at first, but undeniable in their persistence. It wasn't just the passage of time that had begun to shift, it was him. He found himself waking up earlier, but not because he had to face the mounting responsibilities that had once filled him with dread. No, now he woke up to greet the day, to feel the cool morning air brush against his skin, to look out at the world from his window and finally feel like it was worth living in. He wasn't sure exactly when it happened, but he knew something had shifted. It wasn't sudden, nor was it dramatic. It was like the way a river slowly carves through rock, relentless, steady, but gentle in its persistence. He began to let go of the things that had weighed him down for so long, the small resentments, the doubts, the petty grudges that had clung to him like shadows. He released the guilt that had never belonged to him, the burden of decisions he thought were mistakes, the things he had done that he had carried like a stone around his neck. Slowly, he forgave himself, not in a grand ceremonial way, but quietly, in the private corners of his mind. It was like peeling off layers of something he had worn for far too long, only to discover, beneath it all, the person he was meant to be. In those moments of quiet reflection, he realized something profound, something so simple that it took him this long to truly understand it. You are far stronger than you realize, even when you think you're at your lowest. Strength doesn't always come in the form of triumph or victory. Sometimes it's found in surviving the climb, in enduring the struggle, and in finding beauty in that process. It's about resilience, not perfection. But just as he thought he had reached a place of peace, the ground beneath him shifted again. It wasn't dramatic, nor was it the kind of thing he expected, but it hit him harder than anything he had felt in a long time. It was an ordinary day, the kind he thought he had already conquered. But then a sudden blow came from an unexpected source, a reminder of everything he thought he had buried deep within himself. A word, a look, a comment. It didn't matter. What mattered was how it made him feel. It cracked the fragile confidence he had built, leaving him feeling exposed, vulnerable. For a brief moment, everything he had worked so hard for seemed like it didn't matter. He sat there, alone in his car, the engine running, the world outside muffled by the fog of panic that swept through him, His breath hitched, his chest tightened. For a moment, the weight of everything came crashing back. The doubts, the fears, the familiar voices that whispered, "You're not enough, you'll never be enough." His heart raced, his mind spiraled into the same old patterns of self-loathing, and in that moment, he forgot everything. Everything he had learned, everything he had fought for. The progress he had made seemed meaningless in the face of this sudden wave of doubt. What was the point of it all? Was it even possible to rise from this? But then, something shifted inside him. He remembered. He remembered the small victories, the tiny acts of courage that had once seemed insignificant, the moments of quiet resilience, the whispers of hope that had guided him when he thought there was no way forward. And suddenly, it all clicked again. It wasn't the falling that defined him. No, it was the getting back up. It always had been. Every time he thought he couldn't go on, he had found a way. Every time life had knocked him down, he had stood up again and bruised but not broken. That was the truth. It wasn't about avoiding the fall. It was about how he chose to rise each time. He took a deep breath, the tension beginning to ease from his body as he turned off the engine. The doubts were still there, lurking in the background, gnawing at the edges of his mind. But this time, he had something new, a deeper understanding that the battle was never over. And that was okay. The fight itself wasn't the enemy. It was part of the journey. A journey that was never meant to be perfect, but real, raw, and full of lessons. And here's the twist that changed everything for him. There is no final destination. We don't fight, we don't strive, we don't endure, not because the end is near, but because the journey, no matter how difficult, is worth it. We keep going because the struggle itself holds value. The journey, the small moments of growth, the quiet shifts in who we are, that's where the real treasure lies. He wasn't trying to fix everything anymore. He was learning how to live with it all, learning that it was okay to fail, to struggle, to feel weak. He didn't need to be perfect. He didn't need to have it all figured out. But what made him stronger wasn't the absence of pain. It was his ability to accept it and keep moving forward despite it. And maybe, just maybe, you've been where he was. Maybe you're standing at the edge right now, teetering between hope and doubt, feeling like you've run out of strength. But here's the truth. You're closer than you think. Because that breakthrough you've been waiting for, it's already happening. It's happening in every step you take, in every ounce of strength you summon when you don't think you have any left. You're getting through it. You just can't see it yet. So, what happens next? What will you choose to believe when you're standing on the edge, staring into the unknown? The choice, as always, is yours. Final CTA. If you've made it this far, there's something you need to remember. You are stronger than you realize. Drop a comment with the phrase, "I can get through this," as a reminder to yourself and to the world that you're on your own journey. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. And don't forget to subscribe because the next chapter of this story is one you won't want to miss.